Listen to the teacher, dinna say dinna. Listen to the teacher, dinna say hoose. Listen to the teacher, you canna say munna. Listen to the teacher, you munna say moose.
If we just give it out to people that the Scots language is dying out and we're going to be speaking English, no one's going to remember our language because it's lost.
I really like the Scots language, but my mum doesn't like me using it because she thinks it's slang.
See, when she goes, Lloyd, do you want a drink of juice? And I go, Anne. And then my mum goes, it's not I, it's yes.
Listen to the teacher, dinna say dinna. Listen to the teacher, dinna say hoose. Listen to the teacher, you canna say munna. Listen to the teacher, you munna say moose.
When James VI moved the Scottish court to London in 1603, the first nails were firmly hammered into the coffin of the Scots language. If you were to be successful, you didn't speak Scots. Its rich vocabulary was at a stroke consigned to the kail yard. But the mother tongue is fechten back.
Our maths groups are called, what are they called? They're called the Bawheads, the Shantyrassers, the Peedabeds. I like that one, the Peedabeds. The Scunners and the Mingers. And I can now say to the children, right, where are the Mingers? Right, all you Mingers, over here. Pee the beds, that's enough noise from the pee the beds. And such like stuff.
Things have changed since my day, when Scots was practically forbidden in the classroom. But in spite of the obstacles, it's never really gone away. Now we've got a new parliament, with it a new confidence, and an ever-growing support for initiatives aimed at reinvigorating the Scots language.
Listen to the teacher, dinna say dinna. Listen to the teacher, dinna say hoose.
No longer are teachers saying dinna. This Stirling Primary School is typical of the work that's going on throughout Scotland to positively encourage bairns to use their Scots language.
Mrs Wiley, I'm a teacher at St Ninian's Primary School, and we did a project last year on Scots, and what we did was we discovered when we were doing the project that lots of Scots words were being lost. So we decided to collect some Scots words from our families, get them to adopt them and make a dictionary with the words, and that was really successful, and St Ninian's Primary School adopted 230 words and we made a dictionary, which is just lovely. And we published it, and then people got to hear about it. And our MSP, Sylvia Jackson, she asked if she could adopt a word, and she did. I think it was gutties. And she adopted a word, and she said all the MSPs would want to. So Jack McConnell adopted scunnard, and David McCletchie adopted shugly, and Jim Wallace adopted peedy. All the MSPs were vying with each other to use their words, and it was really great fun. It was on the television. And so what is happening now is that all the MSPs have adopted a word. They're going to look after it forever, use it in their letters and speeches forever. The next thing that we did was we contacted every school in Scotland and asked them if they would all adopt words, and they did. And they've sent them to us, and we're going to publish a National Children's Dictionary of Scots words.
So do you think the bairns see themselves as bilingual these days?
I think when they think about it, they're aware that they're bilingual. And they do have two languages that they use, one in school, one at home. But increasingly, I think they use Scots in the classroom. One place where they're using them all the time is when they're texting. And I find that I text in Scots as well. Having a passion and having a mission to actually save the language has been absolutely brilliant, because rather than just be receiving learning somehow or other, they've actually been true citizens, and they've realised that they have something precious here, which is our wonderful ancient language, which can be rescued, and can only be rescued by children. Adults, older people can't rescue it because it'll die out. And this sense of mission and working with other children, and also using up-to-the-minute technology. We've got Waynes to text us their words, and hundreds of Waynes texted words in for our dictionary. And this sense that you can use absolutely bang up-to-the-minute technology.
So there's obviously no doubt about the bairns' enthusiasm for the whole project. But what about the parents? Are you meeting any resistance there?
I did a similar project 5 years ago, and there was much more an issue. One or two parents came up to talk to me and say that they were a bit concerned, you know, and it was slang. Less resistance this time, and a much more a sense. I don't know if it's all these T-shirts you can get that say Crabbit and what else, Girnin and all these things, you know. It wasn't me, and all that stuff. Yeah, all these T-shirts and coasters and mugs you can get. It's just all kind of happening, I think, for the language now. You know, I think its time has come again.
favourite word is minger, because I like saying to my friends, "You're a rotten wee minger." And once when my friend walked into the shop and he was clarty, well, I told him, "You're a rotten wee minger."
The word I adopted last year is gutties, and it means trainers, and my dad always uses it when I've got to go to gym, and he says, "Get your gutties ready for school."
At St Ninians, youngsters are being taught to consider themselves bilingual. They do, and more importantly, they're proud of it. But the damage done by previous educators isn't easy to reverse. And up until recently, the resources just haven't been there to make it easy for the teachers. But Itchy Coo, put together with Arts Council funding 2 years ago, is addressing this through the publication of books of rhymes, stories and poetry.
See that McLetchy? What do you think? Him, howling and brawling and full of the drink. Fights with his shada and then gets arrested. Poor Mrs McLetchy, she's pure flabbergasted. Cheryl McCarroll and Paula McLafferty, Geraldine Sweeney and Big Mary Rafferty, Sheena O'Donnell and Moira McCafferty are going up to Partick for the bingo on Saturday. The whole world's news, you'll soon know it all when you're out for a walk to the shops with my ma.
The latest by Hamish MacDonald from King o' the Midden. One of 16 titles which will take pupils from early primary school through to advanced higher. Matthew Fitt, Schools and Communities Scots Language Development Officer with the project, told me more.
One title that's done awfully well and tons of folk have wanted to get their hands on is the Animal ABC, and we have things like Birdland Bears with big bahookies and fierce flamingos in a fan call, beautifully illustrated, engaging children as young as 3 or 4, right up to folk who are 83 and 84. We're always trying to move on with things, and we have another book which is a counting book called A Moose in the House, and we're taking deliberately Scots words that perhaps may not have been used as much in present times. So the word for a hedgehog is a hurchin, and one of our illustrations is 5 hurchins in medical students' white coats gathered round a turtle, a fierce-looking turtle, and the caption that goes with it is 5 brainy hurchins learning to be surgeons. Humour really is just the way to get into folks' imaginations, and once people are thinking about the words and having a laugh at them, they're also hearing these Scots words that they may not have used for a long, long time.
Which Scots words are we talking about? Are you picking them from one particular area, or does it encompass the whole of Scotland?
The remit of Itchy Coo is to promote as much as possible all the different dialects of Scots. Scots is a language recognised by the executive, recognised by the European Community and the British government, but like any language, it contains different dialects. So we have one book, for example, called Pure Ghosters, which has short stories in different dialects of Scotland. So we have some Doric, some Glaswegian, Dundonian, 2 kinds of Fife, West Fife and East Neuk, some Border Scots, some Edinburgh, where everything's pure Raj and Barry and all the rest of it. So we're trying to promote each dialect of Scots, as there's not one that's better than the other. So we use whatever's available to get kids and adults interested in Scots.
And one resource that is available in schools is the internet. Scottish Language Dictionaries have just launched a new Scots educational website for pupils of all school ages, in the hope that it encourages wider use of Scots in the classrooms.
Now is a dove a doodad, is a doo a dove, and is a cow a coodad, a sparrow just a spion, and is a wall a wadad, is a dog a dog. She's going to warm my ears, dad, instead of scalp my log.
We're looking at the school website that's going to help me learn Scots language.
Well, this is a brilliant website because it has fun and games and it tells you English words and also Scots words. We're going on games now, and I think we're going to go on, this is Corby's Nest. I'm going to read out what you do.
Say to your friend, put your finger in Corby's nest. The Corby's near home.
As well as the games, we've got Getting Good at Scots and Read a Story. I think School Web is going to be really useful.
So it's going to be very good for learning Scots. I do want to speak Scots. I think it's a cool language.
Now there's 2 words for everything, they're sugared in my head. How can I be well bred, Dad, when I keep saying breed? Now is a craw, Dad, a bull a bull. I'm going to try my hardest, Dad, of all.
The bairns of Royal Mile Primary are certainly impressed. And for them, Scots is funky, it's expressive and it's fun. But are all these initiatives not setting them up for a fall? Can you really expect bairns going for a job interview to succeed if they're speaking Scots? Are we not putting them at a disadvantage? That's a point I put to Matthew Fitt.
A lot of folk say it to me, a lot of folk feel that if someone is promoting Scots, then they're hoping that people will give up their English. That, of course, is not the case. And if interviews is where you need to use your English, then we feel that by introducing Scots to the classroom, it gives children a better sense of what English is, and perhaps gives them a better chance at that job if they are producing better English.
You're not living in a bit of a daydream, a kind of idealistic world. Because, you know, television's going to kill it. It's going to die. I mean, Gaelic might well survive because it's getting heaps of cash poured into it, but Scots is dead. The
last thing that Scots is dead. Scots is everywhere, absolutely everywhere. There's a real resurgence of interest among people in Scotland for Scots. It's in the coasters, the mouse mats, the glaikit and the steamer and the scunner, but it's also been used by folk in the media. It's there. It's becoming more integrated with Scottish life now than it's been on the outside for a while. It's certainly not dead.
And he's right, it's currently very much alive and emblazoned on t-shirts, coasters and mugs, with owners proud to declare themselves Glaikit, Drookit and Crabbit. Ronnie and Vary MacDonald of Sprint Design in Stirling are the folk who came up with the Scots dialect range.
Sassenach, an Englishman or woman, used by Highlanders to describe non-Gaelic speaking lowlander. Someone who actually understands the rules of cricket and mentions 1966 every bloody chance they get. See Jimmy Hill.
Firstly, can I ask you how you decide what words you're going to stick on your coasters, your tea clutes or your mugs, whatever? Who decides what goes on them?
Because it's very much a team thing, you know, we've got a wide range of ages in here, so it was the you know, talking to everybody and saying, you know, which are the best words, which are the funniest words, and the most well-loved words, if you like, are the ones which are descriptive of people as opposed to nouns.
One of our best-selling words is Egypt. Idiot, simpleton, one not possessed of all their mental faculties. One who is unable to properly conduct their own affairs, as in, you're off your head, you idiot. That's not a real dug. It's difficult to think of an equivalent word in English that's so expressive, and I think that's one of the beauties of dialect language.
Now, there's obviously a huge difference in Scots spoken in Shetland and Glasgow and Dumfries. Does it vary in which part of the country about who buys what?
In the northeast, for example, words like fankle, footer, canny will all sell reasonably well, whereas they won't sell too well in the west of Scotland.
Equally, in the cities like Glasgow, Gallus is really popular because it's a word which sums up a certain type of person ideally, but it's not known even north in the Central Belt and further north it's not known at all.
So what does it say about us, you know, the whole Scots psyche, that these mugs, these coasters, these tea towels are proving so popular?
It says about the Scots personality that we're very, very proud of our language and we need to use it more, and we need to feel that it's okay to use words like these words and sayings like these sayings. It doesn't mean that we can't speak properly, basically.
My favourite Scots word is ettercat because it means spider. Ever since I was 3, I always wanted a spider.
Well, I like Hodge your Weister or thank you because that's what I like saying to my wee brother.
We've been hearing from Mrs. Wiley and the children of St Ninian's Primary in Stirling, who are encouraging MSPs to adopt one Scots word each and look after it for the rest of their lives. The initiative was launched by a day of Scots speaking in Parliament. The project has had the full support of the director of the Saltire Society and manager of the Scots Language Resource Centre. Michael Hance.
Most MSPs used a Scots word, at least one Scots word, the word that they had adopted, generally speaking, in their speeches in Parliament on the day that the project was launched there. Others actually did something which I think was much more interesting and important, which was that they gave their full speech in Scots. So it was a really exciting thing, and it's just a pity that that was confined to one day.
Well, I was going to ask you that. I mean, that's one day. Are MSPs using Scots in debate and general conversation now?
There are occasionally Scots words turning up. I have heard one rather sad story, though, which was from somebody who is an official reporter. They're the folk who sit and write down everything that MSPs say. And I heard a very sad story that some MSPs are going to the official reporters and asking them to remove Scots words. I couldn't believe it, to be honest. I really thought that was, deed lang syne, that kind of attitude, but obviously it isn't. And what we've got is people who still feel some sense of shame about having a Scots identity. And one of the ways that they are able to locate that Scots identity is in the use of Scots words. It's really quite sad, but I think it shows how deep this feeling of linguistic inferiority is amongst certain people in Scotland, and how important it is that we address that issue and try and make people feel proud about their linguistic heritage.
And one of the MSPs who shares Michael Hance's belief in the language is Cathy Peaty.
I think it's really important that we use Scots and encourage our bairns to use Scots. It's part of our cultural heritage. We've been encouraged to forget our words, and indeed lots of words have been lost. But I think it's very important that, we know our language and can celebrate it.
But if we go back to Michael Hance's point he was making there, is part of the problem that people are embarrassed about it? They've got an almost linguistic inferiority complex about using Scots?
Absolutely. People don't want to use it. And interestingly, I used some Scots in my newsletter recently, and people didn't know what it was about. So people don't read Scots, and they don't see it's something that it's about them. So it's not just about speaking Scots, it's about reading Scots and writing it.
But do people like to hear you speaking Scots? I mean, is it almost a case of you like your leaders, your MSPs, your ministers, your government officials, you want them to be educated, speaking proper?
Well, the last Parliament, 300 years ago, that undemocratic Parliament with very few women or no women, spoke Scots. And I think there's a difference between speaking Scots and speaking slang. And I don't think we should be ashamed of using our language, because that is about confidence of a people being proud of their heritage.
So how do you speak, or do you speak in Parliament then?
Well, it'd be really difficult if I tried to put a posh accent on, because it wouldn't work. So I try to speak in a way that people understand what I'm saying, but I'm not afraid to use Scots words or to use Scots language. And I always talk about bairns rather than children, and just use basic words that I grew up with. We should be proud of it. I mean, I love hearing people speaking Scots. It's who we are. And if we can say to our youngsters coming up, that's all right, regardless of where you come from, if you live in Scotland, you can speak that language and use it.
I think the best thing that's come from the Scottish Parliament has been this overwhelming sense of a rebirth of Scottishness, and wrapped up with that is the idea of language. I'm hearing it in so many different places that I didn't expect to hear it before, and I mentioned sports reports before, but also on media reports, news reports.
Brings us on nicely to the media. I mean, what do you think about the whole profile of language in the media?
I think that there's been a real change, particularly in the BBC, which used to be the guardian of standard English. And there's been a real change in the way that the media is approaching Scots. I think of somebody who I love to listen to, Tam Cowan. I'm sure he's not interested in the whole Scots language debate, and there's no reason for him to be interested in it. But the way he uses Scots on Off the Ball and on his TV show, he's much more honest. Tam is really just admitting in his use of Scots that is the language of supporters and of the managers and of the players. And so in that regard, the BBC is doing very well, and other stations are doing not too bad either.
But not everyone would agree with Matthew Fitt. Michael Hance takes a somewhat different view.
The problem at the moment I see, particularly with radio, is that there are certain voices which are almost completely absent. And I don't think that's just a problem for Radio Scotland.
Who's absent from it then?
Well, if you go out and listen to how people speak on the street, I'm afraid to say that you really don't hear that represented, that diversity of voices represented on stations like Radio Scotland. And I think that's very sad. Why is it that when we're listening to Radio Scotland, we're hearing the voices of what must be a very small percentage of the population? I think often what can happen is Radio Scotland presenters, and presenters on commercial stations as well, can think that, well, we represent the speech of the majority of the people, and that's because the majority of the people they mix with speak in the same way as them. But if you actually go out onto the streets and open up your ears, open your lugs, or open your een, whatever it is that Radio Scotland has used as its little catchphrase over the past wee while, you'll hear the reality of the speech. I like Robbie Shepherd and I like his show, and I think it's awful fine to hear him speak, but I think it would be quite nice if even for 5 minutes once a week somebody read the news in Scots. You know, if people heard other folks' accents more often, then it would be easier for them to understand it. You know, nobody has any problems understanding what people in East Enders say. Well, there's nobody living round about us speaking like that, or very few of them. But if you're constantly exposed to a voice, then eventually it becomes fairly easy to understand. It just takes a wee bit of effort and a wee bit of exposure, and eventually these problems can be overcome.
As a mother, my favourite word is sleister, because my wains make such a sleister and a pluter and a sauce in the kitchen.
The word I adopted is scunnered, because the reason I like it is because my family uses it and stuff. And there's also a different meaning for scunnered. It means, like, say your cat ate the budgie, you'd be like scunnered at the cat.
We now live in a multicultural society, and for many people who come to Scotland, Scots becomes part of their natural tongue. Matthew believes that the influences they bring with them can only benefit the Scots language.
Any country that has all sorts of different cultural influences, it becomes a better one. The more diversity there is, the better. And Scots fits right in there.
I'm Sohail Sadi, and I'm a writer based in Glasgow. My parents originally came from Pakistan, and before that from Afghanistan and India, respectively. I think that if you're aware of another language, or indeed another dialect, it gives you another take on the primary language, if you like, that you work in. So my primary language being English, being aware of all of these local and more distant diasporic languages, if you like, I think gives me an added string to my bow, if you like. This is from my book, The Burning Mirror, and it's from a short story called The Queens of Govan. And later, she'd married Kesser Sahib, who was almost 2 decades her senior, for financial security and a modicum of respectability. Romance had never been an issue. Asians were very pragmatic about romance, love, and all that. If the ink of its delicate Nastaliq symbolism should invade the gullies of Karachi or Kinnan Park, then it could cause only strife and unhappiness. Because the expectations born in the dreams of romance could never be fulfilled this side of Qiyamah. So as you can see from there, there's some Urdu words in, and it's kind of done in a Glaswegian way. No language is fossilised. Every language changes and is fluid. Words come into it, words get forgotten, and that's great. That's the way language is.
One stark illustration that Scots has come of age is when you see it in advertising, because advertising is cold-blooded, it's cynical, and it's all about money. But are there any examples of it?
One example that springs to mind is on Princess Street just now. There's a wheelbarrow somewhere along the street, and the name of the barrow is Bonnie Floors. And I remember Air Iceland were asking people in an advertisement in the front, I think it was the Glasgow Herald, why they were flying to New York via London, and the question was, are you off your head? The Tenants Lager ads are fantastic. They go around the world, and they had one from, I think it was Bangkok, and they had subtitles for all the things that the people were saying in Thai or whatever language it was, and a lot of it was in Scots. That was basically how Scots began in the first place. When Scots became the commercial language back in the 12th century, when the Normans came and established the boroughs, Scots became the language of commerce, and once it has that hard-nosed feel to it again, I think that again will only benefit the language for its future.
So have we come full circle? Has Scots finally come of age? Is there really any need for all the schemes, the projects and the initiatives? Because bairns are embracing it. And after all, they are future MSPs, broadcasters and teachers. Scots, isn't dead yet.
Aye, absolutely is alive. They are speaking Scots, but with every generation that goes by, more and more words are lost because what the previous generation knows, they don't pass on. And also, what we're really after, we're not trying to create an independent state of hoochters and tuchters who speak only Scots and run about with all sorts of varying degrees of colours of tartan. That's not the case at all. This fits into a modern country, but a country can only really be modern when it understands itself, and at the moment children in Scottish schools don't know the name of this language. They have, as I said before, they have different names for it, slang or talking no right, or they refer to English as speaking properly. They're not aware of the terminology, and therefore without that terminology they can't advance. They remain in the rest of their lives, and they pass it on to their children as, oh, don't speak like that, that's slang. Or even they'll say, dinna talk that way. They'll tell them in Scots not to speak in Scots, and that can't be a healthy situation. So initiatives are absolutely essential to give Scots back its name and give folk back their voice.
If You Found Your Tongue was presented by Euan McIlwraith. Euan will be back on Saturday morning as part of the Out of Doors team. That's at